Greetings, friends. I'm Greg Langstaff, certified resume strategist and job search coach, and you have found my free job interview course here on YouTube. Now, I've spent 15 years as a hiring manager, a recruiter, and a job search coach, and now I'm going to share everything I've learned about the most nerve-wracking part of the job search, the job interview, with you here today. In this video, we're going to go over everything you need to feel confident and in control during your job interviews. We're going to be covering some very useful topics, including how to predict what questions are going to come up, the perfect formula for answering those questions. We'll go over what to do with tricky questions like tell me about yourself and what is your biggest weakness. We'll also talk about the best questions to ask back to the hiring manager, and of course, before the video is over, I'm going to tell you all the things to absolutely never do in a job interview. Now, throughout this video, I am also going to be sprinkling in some instructions on how you can enter to win a free resume review from me, so make sure you follow along and keep your eyes peeled for those instructions to win that valuable prize. So let's dive right in and talk about what our goals should be during a job interview. Obviously, I want to get the job, yes. But in order to be strategic during our job interviews, our goals are going to have to be a little more refined than that. So, as you'll see, the first thing we want to do during a job interview is demonstrate our interpersonal skills. They're hiring someone that they're going to spend thousands of hours with over the coming years. That might be more time than they get to spend with their family, so they're going to want to make sure that they're hiring someone who they like to spend time with. Now, on our end, all that means is being ourselves, making sure we're personable, agreeable, and easy and collaborative to talk to. We are not getting hired, no matter how smart or capable we are, if they don't like the idea of spending time with us. So make sure that is on the forefront of your mind during your interviews. Next, our second goal, I should say, is to evaluate whether or not we want to work there. Remember that the hiring process is a two-way street, and if we're not getting good vibes from them, we don't need to take the offer. So make sure your antenna is up and you are not pursuing any job opportunities where you've gotten red flags during the job interview. If we end up in a toxic environment, this could have serious long-term repercussions on our mental health, and it could also damage our career. So keep your eyes peeled for any questionable behavior from the interview panel. And third, we want to make sure we're telling them our best stories during the job interview. They already know that we're capable of doing the things that they need us to do in this job, or they wouldn't have invited us for the interview. Now, we're among the top 5 to 2% of candidates, and we need to make all those skills very real for them. And the best way to do that is to tell them stories about our best successes. We're going to dive really deep into that in this course in just a few minutes. Now, if you want to see a ton of sample answers and formulas on how to answer these questions and many other job interview questions the best way possible, check out my ebook, 101 Interview Questions and How to Answer Them Perfectly. I've linked to that down in the description. And if you're looking to enter the contest to win a free resume review from me, the first task is very easy, just like this video. Okay, now let's dive into the most important thing we can do in preparing for a job interview, which is predicting what interview questions are going to come up. Now you might be wondering, Greg, how the heck am I supposed to predict what interview questions they're going to ask? They could ask me anything. Yes, that's absolutely true. But if we do go through this process and we do our best to try to predict what questions are going to come up using the formula and tools I'm about to give you, we will have a much better chance of having mentally prepared to give them the stories and skills that they're going to need to hear from us to know we're good at the things they need us to be good at to hire us for the job. So, let me show you exactly how to do that right now. This is the hiring manager's secret checklist. Now, I've linked to an editable version of this down below, which you can make a copy of and edit yourself. Although please don't hit request share, because then the version that you get, everyone will be able to see what you're writing. So just hit file and make a copy. And then we're going to fill this in, starting with this key skills column. And we're going to fill this in with skills that we're finding in the job description of the job we're interviewing for. So make sure when you apply to jobs, you're saving that job description somewhere. And we're going to fill in this column with, firstly, job duties or actual tasks that they describe the person in the role doing. These are the most important. And they're going to look like things that you would actually do, like web design, general ledger accounting, budget management, data analysis, whatever the tasks are they're talking about in the job description. Next, we'll throw in any industry terminology, like if you're in cybersecurity, you might see threat intelligence, or healthcare, you might see clinical strategy, something to that effect. We'll add in any software or technical equipment that they are mentioning, and then we'll also add in any soft skills they mention. So this could be collaborative, motivating teams, working autonomously. This stuff's going to be less important, but it's good to keep it in mind. And once we've walked through the entire job description, we're going to have a big old list that will look something like this. So the next step is going to be converting that list into questions using the tell us about a time formula. Now this is pretty easy. Basically, for every item on our list, we're going to flip it into a question by adding tell me about a time at the beginning. For budget management, it could say tell me about a time when you effectively managed a budget. For social media marketing, the question could be tell us about a time you built a successful social media campaign. Certainly have more questions than they'll ever ask in a job interview. I often get from 15 to 30 questions on my list. Now, this is great because we may not have perfectly guessed exactly what the questions are that they're going to ask in the interview, but we have very likely touched on most, if not all, of the topics they're going to be asking us about. And as we move forward and start to pick out stories that can answer these questions and speak to these topics effectively, we are far more likely to be ready no matter how they phrase the questions when the interview begins. And if you're having trouble brainstorming all of these topics and formulating questions, you can skip the headache and grab my super helpful ebook, 101 Job Interview Questions and How to Answer Them Perfectly. I've linked to that down in the description. And if you're enjoying this class and you're finding my teaching style useful, I have an even more in-depth job interview masterclass webinar which you can take, which has even more example questions and answers and worksheets and in-depth advice. Both of those are linked down below, and I've actually bundled them for a discount if you want both. Now let's talk about how to formulate the perfect interview answers. Now, the best interview answers are typically when we are telling stories about times when we used our skills successfully in past jobs. Now, in a moment, we're going to go back into the hiring manager's secret checklist and start to fill that out with example stories that'll show off the skills we have. But first, I wanted to share with you a very effective formula for conveying those stories in a way that the hiring managers are going to be able to follow, they're going to remember, and they're going to enjoy. So let's talk about the STAR method and other options we have for answering these questions. The STAR method. Tried, tested, and true. So STAR is an acronym which stands for situation, task, action, or actions, as I like to say, because it's typically lots of actions that we'll describe in the answer, and a result. Now, in this scenario, situation is really just us saying what company we worked for when the story takes place that we're about to tell, and of course the job title we held. Task is going to be what we were trying to achieve in this story. It could be a problem we were trying to solve or a project we were working on. And actions are all the steps that we took to complete this task. You might weave in some explanations of decisions you made and why you made them, but mostly we're going to be walking them through the steps we took. And then, of course, the result. This is us wrapping up a story in a nice, clear way that explains to the listener that everything went well. Now, this part is pretty critical because if we're trying to win over these hiring managers, we want them to think, oh wow, you did that for them? Well, I need to hire you to come do that for me. So here's a quick example of what a STAR method looks like when we're telling just a simple story. Situation. This morning, I slept through my alarm. Task, I only had 5 minutes to catch my bus or I would be late for work. Actions, I threw on the first outfit I could find. I brushed my teeth as fast as I could. I skipped coffee and just grabbed a granola bar for breakfast on the road, put on my shoes, and I sprinted to the bus stop. Lots of actions. Result, I made it to the bus in time and I was on time for work. Now, STAR, it's just a natural way of telling stories, and telling your stories this way will make life easier for both you to remember all the pieces of the story and for the hiring managers to process what you're saying. So now that you understand the STAR method, our next task is to return to the hiring manager's secret checklist, and we are going to populate this story of when you used this skill column with stories of when we've used that skill. The idea being we want to prepare ourselves to deliver that story in the STAR method formula if that skill comes up in an interview. And by the way, if you can't remember all these details on your own for the interview, it is absolutely fine to bring something like this to an interview, whether that's virtual or in person. It's just going to make you look prepared. So that is a good thing. Now, the second of 3 tasks that you need to complete to enter to win a free resume review from me is to leave a comment in this video that has the word interview in it. Now let's move on and talk about some of the most common, tricky interview questions that come up. What is your biggest weakness? Tell us about yourself. Why do you want this job? These 3 questions have given us nightmares for centuries, mainly because it's very unclear what they want to know when they ask these questions. So let me walk you through exactly how I suggest you answer each of these in an interview. First, why do you want this job, or often phrased, why are you interested in this position? This is secretly a 3-part question. Here are those 3 parts. 1, what job duties are you most excited to perform in this job? 2, what about this company makes you want to work here? And 3, what do you like most about this industry? And or when did you become interested in this industry? Now, if we can specifically speak to these 3 points, they're going to feel like they understand us a lot better. They're going to also feel like they believe that we're motivated to do this job, which means we're going to try harder and we're going to stay longer, and they'll trust us to try our best. So even when things get tough, they'll know we're in it because we are interested in this position for all the right reasons. So next is tell us about yourself. This one can be incredibly difficult because there are so many right ways to do it. So if you have something you already like, by all means, stick to that. This is my personal favorite structure. It gives them a little summary of who we are and gives us a chance to tell them about the key transitions in our life that led us to where we are today. We could also, using this structure, elaborate a lot on the skills we've developed along our path. So it may look something like this. I am a functional title, such as I'm an accountant with a passion for insert industry, preferably their industry. I completed my degree in blank, and that is where I developed my foundational skills in blank. Out of school, I earned my first part-time job at company where I added additional skills, including blank, blank, and blank. Having the chance to develop those skills set me up for a big career move, which brought me to next company, next job title. This was a fantastic learning experience because that job gave me the chance to experience and then sort of give them more detail on the things you developed in that next job. And this might repeat a couple of times. I had the chance to really develop an expertise in that type of work at my last employer, and that is why I'm so interested in this role and why I feel like I'd be an incredible fit for your team. So at this point, we're circling back to what all our past experiences bring to the table for them now. Finally, let's move on to talk about what is your biggest weakness. Firstly, anyone who still asks this question is on my no list. But of course, it's a bit of a trick question. Obviously, they would love to know what our real weaknesses are, but we're not going to give that to them because we don't want to be ruled out by telling them we're bad at something they need us to be good at. But at its core, what this question is really looking for is just self-awareness and our ability to notice where we have some weaknesses and, make efforts to improve in those areas. So the perfect answer to this question fits these 3 criteria. It's related to the job. So, if it's an accounting job, we cannot tell them our biggest weakness is singing. Then we've not answered the question and that counts against us. But, of course, we also don't want to say something that is critical to the job. So again, if it was an accounting job, we're not going to say spreadsheets, because that would disqualify us from the job. Now, the ideal answer is something we've been working on, since the whole point of this question is to show them that we have awareness of our weaknesses and we take action on improving them. So for this question, I typically pick something that's kind of on the periphery of the job responsibilities and then frame it as a weakness that is more of a work in progress than an active weakness. Key phrase I love to say is this doesn't come naturally to me, and then talk them through how much work we put in to be good enough at that thing. So these and many other tricky questions like why did you leave your last role? Walk us through your resume. Can you explain this gap in your work history? Why should we hire you? And many others. Check out my Seal the Deal interview bundle, which includes the ebook 101 interview questions and how to answer them perfectly, and the job interview masterclass. Those are both bundled together, linked down below. Check it out. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to walk you through all my biggest job interview no-nos. But first, we need to talk about an extremely critical part of the job interview process, which is typically at the end of the interview panel will ask you, do you have any questions for us? Now, study after study has shown that not having questions for the interview panel is rated as the #1 biggest red flag among candidates. They are not just asking this question because they want to be nice or they're not sure they covered everything. They want to know that you've been thinking critically about what it will be like when you're in this role. So, asking these questions can really be a make or break. And please, do not ask them, when will I be hearing back? That does not count as a question for them. They want questions about this job. So, here are 4 categories that will knock their socks off for questions you can ask them. So these are the 4 categories of questions you can ask after a job interview. First, obviously questions about the role. If there's any elements of the job duties that you're unclear about, like the team you'll be managing or maybe the programs you'll be overseeing, those kinds of specific questions about the role are great. Now, we don't want to ask any broad questions like, so what exactly will I be doing in this role? We want to show that we've done some research, so we're asking a level of question that's a bit more specific. Second, you can ask some generic questions. There are some great questions that could really be applicable in any job interview. My favorite one is, what has been one of your proudest moments working here? But for a full list of all the best questions, the generic questions that I love to ask in job interviews or love being asked as an interviewer, check out my ebook, 101 Job Interview Questions. We have a bunch of those types of questions in there as well. Third, impressive questions. So these are the questions that we're going to ask to kind of show off a little bit. And they're going to either give us a chance to demonstrate that we have a skill that we want them to focus on when they think of us, or we'll ask a question that shows we've been kind of doing our research. We've already been thinking about how we can help their company to thrive. So a skill-based question could be something like, another skill set that I bring to the table, which we haven't talked about, is blank. Would it be useful if I gave you a little background on my abilities in this area? And a research-based question might sound like, I read through your company's strategic plan and I saw that one of your 5-year goals was blank. How will this department contribute to that goal? Both of these, excellent. The fourth question category, of course, is just genuine questions. So if there's anything that you really want to know that's going to help us decide if we want the job, if we can take the job, this might cover things like travel requirements, remote working arrangements. This kind of stuff is also fine to ask during a job interview as well. Okay, a couple final thoughts on questions to ask the interviewers, because this is very important. I would recommend going in with probably 6 questions ready to go, but be prepared to maybe only ask 3 or 4 of them depending on time. Also, write your questions down in advance and pull them out when the time comes. This will make you look very prepared, and it lets you actually listen to the question being answered instead of just sitting there while they're answering the question, trying to remember the next question you wanted to ask. Now, let's get into some interview no-nos, and then I will move on and tell you the last thing you need to do to enter to win the free resume review from me. Now, one of the worst things that you can do in an interview is throw it all away with a big, hairy blunder at some point in the interview. So, I'm going to share with you some of the most common interview mistakes, and then I'm going to share a few unbelievable ones that have actually happened to me. So, let's do this. First off, we're not going to ask about salary, vacation days, benefits during an interview. I know these are perfectly valid things to want to know, but until we have an offer, we're going to keep those questions to ourselves. Once we have an offer, before we tell them if we're accepting, that's when we can talk about that kind of benefit. Also, don't ask, when will I be hearing back? We covered that. That is just a question that doesn't really serve anyone. If they want to get back to you, they will, whether you ask that question or not. Next, I can't believe I'm going to say this one, but apparently a ton of people have been breaking this rule. So during an interview, no matter how chill the vibe is or how nice they are, don't even swear if they swear first. 4, you might do this one accidentally. If you're being interviewed by more than one person, make sure you don't just stare at one person. This happens all the time. People are nervous, so they'll look at whoever's sort of looking the kindest at them, and they'll just fixate on that one person, and it makes everyone feel awkward. 5, don't say I'm nervous. This makes us look kind of weak, and they will not have confidence in us. It doesn't add anything. If you feel like you're about to say something like that, just pivot and say, I'm excited. 6, don't be late. If it's an in-person interview, 5 to 10 minutes early is your sweet spot. If it's online, try to log in like 2 to 3 minutes early. Don't underdress, of course. Make sure you dress sort of one level up of what they would wear every day on the job. So if they're dressing casual, dress business casual. Number 8, just don't talk for too long. Most interview answers should be from 1 minute to 3 minutes. And if you go over that once in a while or under that once in a while, that's okay. But that is sort of the range we want to be aiming for most of the time. 9, if it's a video call, don't go into the interview without testing the microphone, the camera, and the meeting software first. Okay, now let's do some wild ones that I've unfortunately have seen from people I've been interviewing. They did not get hired. So, number 10, don't yell at anyone. I once saw a very highly coveted candidate completely throw away a job that was in the bag because he was hangry and lunch was delayed and he snapped at someone. Number 11, if it's a phone interview, don't be driving, don't be walking, and most importantly, don't be running. I once had someone I was phone interviewing who was either on a run or running away from something or running to something. I didn't find out what, but I never met this person again because obviously we did not invite them on to the next round of interviews. And finally, lastly, my most important interview no-no, do not go into the interview without having practiced first. You will sound so much more polished and so much more professional if you rehearse your answers. If you use the hiring manager's secret checklist, if you practice using the STAR method, you will sound so prepared, so professional, and that is who people want to hire. Now, if you want to make sure you're nailing every facet of the interview, make sure you check out my Seal the Deal interview bundle. This includes the 101 interview questions and how to answer them perfectly, and my job interview masterclass webinar. That is linked down below, and we have a 10% off sale for people who've completed this free interview course. The promo code is interview10. Check that out down below. And if you want to enter to win that free resume review from me, the last thing you need to do is subscribe to this channel. Now, if you need help with your resume, I have a very similar free resume writing course here on YouTube. Check it out. I'll see you over there.